Philosophy 2. About saying the truth to people. Dear Shoyo, you should always tell the truth to people you care about. Even if they won't like what they hear. You just have to say it. Like Ukai does with all the women he meets. Like Mom did when she sat you down and tried to tell you about your dad and your genes. Except with that time, even though she was telling the truth, you already knew, cause your last memory was when he showed up at your apartment in the middle of the night and started banging on the door and begging for money and saying, "Jesus Christ, Darla, open the door, I'm dying out here," and Mom's shaky hands undid the lock slowly and cracked open the door. She told him in a trembling voice that he had to go away, about the neighbors and the restraining order. But he pushed himself in and went on his knees and begged for a little money. As much as she could spare. He needed it so bad. She didn't understand how his body felt. He probably wouldn't survive even one more night. You snuck out of your room. Remember? And watched everything from the hall. How Dad grabbed the hem of Mom's nightgown and put it to his face and breathed it in and said how nobody could understand how bad he was cause they never felt it for themselves and they never been inside his body. That she was the only person who cared at all. The only person who was willing to sacrifice for him. You can never forget the serious look on Mom's face that night. Like she knew she was wrong to let him in. And she knew something bad was about to happen. Something that would change things forever. 5 tall guys sat in a circle of lawn chairs, talking and laughing, and eating cereal out of plastic bowls with their fingers. I watched them from the railroad tie on the campsite over, waiting for Ukai to come out of his tent and for us to start working. It was my 4th day, and I was getting there an hour early for 2 reasons. First, I was excited to have a real job. I could barely sleep, which was weird cause during my last 6 months at Horizons, all I did was sleep. Second, I was so thankful Ukai hired me in the first place. And I thought the best way to show him was to always be there when he came out of his tent. One of the tall guys got out of his chair and stood on a skateboard with his cereal bowl looking back in the tent and saying, "Come on. Kay, you can't stay in the tent for the rest of the summer, his friends say stuff too." Then everybody shrugged and went back to eating their cereal. I was watching them and thinking how they were the kind of pretty you could never actually meet. When Ukai's voice scared me. There he is. I spun around. He climbs out of his tent yawning and stretching wearing a t-shirt that said, "Cardiff by the Sea," which is where we were, and the black surf trunks that went down to his knees and no shoes. "I see you, Sho. Dawn patrollers have hardly set their boards in the water. And here you are, ready to mop more sewage." I stood up. Fortunately, there won't be any actual mopping today. He held up in his tent flap and, out of it, climbed a black-haired woman in a long white t-shirt, holding an open duffel bag with a black dress hanging out. She stopped and pushed the dress the rest of the way in and zipped the zipper. Ukai looked at me and shrugged. "Donna, I want you to meet a colleague of mine. Shoyo Hanada, from Fallbrook, California. He would cheat his own grandmother out of a game of speed chess. But he works his butt off around the campsites." "Hi there," Donna said, smiling at me. "Hi, ma'am." I looked over at Ukai. "I never cheated you in." "Come on, Shoyo, we don't need to rehash this again. 1 minute I have you down 4 pieces. The next you're knocking off my queen and I'm mated." He shook his head and turned to Donna. "I've played a lot of speed chess in my day. Donna, a board doesn't change that quickly without a little foul play." "I don't know, Ukai. Shoyo doesn't look like the cheating type to me. It's all an act." They both laughed. So I laughed too. How I got the job in the first place. Me and Ukai met at Horizons in Fallbrook when he used to come visit Maria. This nice counselor lady who worked there. He'd show up on most Sundays and we all watch football games on TV and throw the frisbee, and eventually me and him started playing speed chess and I always beat him and he always said I cheated. Then, before last summer started, 2 things happened. First, Maria got laid off because of the economy. And they only had 2 counselors working at the time. Second, Ukai filled out some paperwork for me to have a job with him for the summer. And even though he said he would bring me to my counseling as much as they wanted, they rejected him. He appealed and had a meeting with the board of directors and explained how it would be a good experience that I could take into the workforce. But the directors turned him down, saying it was too far from their headquarters and how I was an at-risk case and needed closer supervision. At least through the completion of my therapy program. Ukai came to see me right after. This time without Maria even being there. And told me everything they said and how sorry he was. A whole year passed. Then, at the start of this summer, I packed a bag without even asking, snuck out at 4 in the morning, and hitchhiked all the way down to the beach. When I finally made it to the sand, the sun was just starting to rise. I sat and watched it for a while and thought about my new life. Then I walked north along the tide with all the morning joggers and people walking their dogs, asking every few miles how close I was to Cardiff by the sea. Until eventually I found the campsite and this lifeguard named Christian took me to Ukai, who was eating breakfast on the campus picnic table with a pretty black woman. He smiled and nodded his head, said, "To hell with the system, big guy. Welcome to San Elijo maintenance."